I was texting you that, oh, you're already starting. Okay. Hopefully, I was like, hopefully you got my text. All right, I'm gonna leave. Bye.
At least I have somebody to talk to. Hi, Akshay.
Hi.
How are you?
I am thankful to be in a quiet room away from my kids for an hour.
You know,
No, I'm just kidding.
I was telling my friends that I have the best calls right now because they're so productive. Like our calls are done in 10 minutes because I don't have to rush through it with my impatience. The wives and the children are screaming.
Yeah. No, we have set up a schedule on a daily basis where my wife and I will spend a couple hours in the morning doing kind of the main pieces of the schoolwork that the kids need to do. And my kids are in kindergarten and first grade. It's not like they're doing like, calculus or anything, but still, a little bit of discipline in the morning. And then they get a lot of free time to either self-teach, do Legos, like do things that they want to do, but that aren't like glued to a screen. And then in the afternoon, it's like, it's a free for all. You do what you want.
Screen time is out the door.
Exactly.
No.
There's no such thing as screen time in our house anymore. But we feel good if we get that done in the morning. We also get some kind of dedicated time with the kids. Then they can, they're going through their own mental struggles. I mean, everybody is dealing with not seeing friends and not being in a normal atmosphere and anxiety and all of those things. So, yeah.
Hi, Bob.
Hi, Bahar. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Haven't seen you in a while.
I know. We've been secretly trying to grow here.
Oh, well, that's a good thing. Yeah, I've actually been meaning to reach out and catch up, so I'm glad you did this. We'll have to follow up sometime and chat a little bit more about what you're up to.
How's it going with you? How's this quarantine going?
Good. Everything's going good. Yeah. Keeping busy. I mean, the quarantine is sort of like life is normal for me because I generally work out of my house anyway. So I have an office that I go to that I really only go when I get stir crazy in my house. So I've been going there one day a week pretty much into my office, but there's nobody there. I just go in to get out of my house.
It's the same for me. Not much has changed. It's the same office, same life, less traveling, but
less traveling
and less restaurants.
I was supposed to be in London this week. I was supposed to be in Prague next week, so I'm missing all that.
Now we're all supposed to be where we are.
Yeah.
We're waiting. Hi, Victor.
Hello again. Good morning.
How are you?
Fine.
Good evening where you are. I think we're expecting one more, but Victor, tell us how are things different for you with quarantine? Is life different?
Well, yes, of course. Something is different, definitely. So, we're all sitting in this cells at home or at country houses. So, yes. So, to a certain extent, there are many differences, but pretty much it is, from business perspective, the same life, but just from different perspective.
So we can get started. Alex is logging on. I'm excited to have this group because I've known some of you for a while now. I've known Bob since we literally launched. I met him the first week we launched and tracked him down and made him look at what we had at a conference. And of course, since then, a few times a year, I still stalk him to get his opinion on stuff and see how everything is going. And actually, I reached out to last year, and we met last year, and it was when I was working really hard to try to understand and find the right market fit. And he sat down with both Alex and I and gave us some really good advice. And actually has an interesting background. He was a practicing attorney, and then he went into the IT side of things. I'll let you tell the story of where and how you came into this industry.
Yeah. I don't think you can call it a unique path anymore. I think it's starting to become a more common path. But I practiced for about 7 years at big law, medium law, and then went in a slightly different direction and stopped practicing when I joined Axiom in 2012 and switched over to legal consulting and business development. And that's really where I got a much broader view and a much deeper view of what the legal industry was really about, all the different players, how the different sectors kind of work together, how they didn't work together, how they continue to not work together. But if we're really going to get anywhere, they have to start working together better. So I was at Axiom until 2018, and then got pulled in-house at Facebook on the legal ops side. So I handle now a number of their initiatives around spend, process, some technology, aimed mostly at the law firm sector, but certainly looking internally as well. And all of that is I think a great kind of topic for what things are going to look like when we come out of this. When we come out of this.
You also teach.
I do teach. I teach a couple of different classes at my alma mater at Santa Clara. I'm actually really excited to see the kind of paradigm shift on the academic side for how law school's entire model is kind of up for grabs right now. And I think that's really exciting, especially for the student side. Not so much for the law school side because there are revenue implications, but I think for the student side, I think it's a fantastic possibility.
It's really interesting. I was on the day this was kind of all breaking, right around, it was like March 12th, March 11th, 12th, 13th. I was out in Utah at Brigham Young University Law School for a meeting out there. And I was there on the day that they decided they had to shut down the law school. And we're supposed to be having some meetings, about other stuff, but suddenly they're all trying to figure out, now what do we do? We have to shut down the law school. What do we do? How do we teach students? So that was really interesting. I had just finished interviewing somebody there about how they're teaching law students about technology. And of course, everything we had talked about was about to be uprooted because they were going to have to make it all go virtual.
It's a nice time though, like with all of these changes, it's a nice time for new attorneys who don't have to go through this crap and learn a bunch of traditional things that really don't work anymore. And they can come into this new practice of law. And I think it's just an alternative way of practice. I think legal service providers are going to grow. I think people like Akshay are going to transition into other roles, more into the business of law or technology of law. That's going to grow as well. Is that what you guys kind of see with what's going to happen after everything calms down?
That you mean that the way law students are trained and taught will be different?
The way they're going to practice as new attorneys.
Oh well, that is without doubt. I think, yeah.
Yeah, I think if you look at 10 years ago, we were coming out of a pretty. We're coming out of a pretty significant economic crisis, which had at the base of it a real economic issue. We don't have a real economic issue. This isn't a market-driven issue. It's a pandemic-driven issue, but the economic implications could even be worse, on the back end of it. But if you look at what happened between, let's say 2012, 13, and let's say about a year and a half ago, you saw a huge explosion in ALSPs, legal technology, a different way of thinking, which started transitioning and kind of trickling down into the law school world. I think you're going to see even more of that. I don't know if anyone reads things that Mark Cohen puts out or Susskind puts out, but one of the terms that Mark Cohen has used in some of his recent writings has been a turbocharging of the legal industry, which is going to even further accelerate, especially legal technology being leveraged across, all the various different sectors, law schools, law firms, in-house departments. So I think you're going to see an even bigger explosion of opportunities for law students coming out of law school, and certainly a deeper mentality around how they're going to be leveraging different parts of their brain that have less to do with the Socratic method and the knowledge of the law, and more around what we call the business of the law.
I think the biggest change driver is going to be customer expectations and their needs, because we already had this problem of people getting access to lawyers and actually being able to get their needs met without seeing a lawyer in person. I mean, this has been a big problem in the legal industry. And now that push is just, the push is going to be harder and attorneys need to adapt. I was searching the most popular key terms on Google, and force majeure and getting out of contracts and contract dispute was the highest search term. And I don't think that's ever happened in law, where the highest search term on Google is a legal concept. So a lot of people are actually starting to look at this in more of an educational way, and customers are educating themselves, which means expectations are going to change, and the way they want to interact with lawyers are also going to have to change. So I think we're going to have a lot more educated clients who are going to have higher expectations and push the legal industry to change, because this is not gonna work in the long term. It's not even feasible right now. From the other side, you brought up Susskind, and I want to talk about the concept of online courts. It was his latest book, and more about tomorrow's lawyers. We can come back to that, but I think we all agree that lawyers will change. And let's talk about the court system a little bit, and how that's going to change. Because even now, there's so many backlogs, there's so many issues, but there's a huge trend towards call-in and conference calling, which was not common in the court system. So where do you guys see that? Do you have any experience with cool ways of interacting with the court, or opinions of what you want it to look like?
I actually had Susskind was on my podcast last week, so we had a long conversation about this. But I just yesterday recorded another episode of my podcast. It's called Law Next, and I had on it a judge. He's almost in some ways the opposite of what Susskind might be talking about, or what you might be thinking about when you think about courts going online, because he's a county judge in Louisiana who oversees a small group of drug courts and specialty courts in Louisiana. And he has cobbled together essentially a virtual court system, but he's done it without high-priced technology or expensive technology. He's using Zoom, he's using Slack, he's using Calendly. I mean, he's using all these off-the-shelf kind of technology products, and he's just cobbled them all together. And he's been kind of working on this, and he's been developing this over the last few years. But as he said, the last few weeks have basically forced him to compress into a couple of weeks plans he was going to implement over a couple of years. But it's really cool what he's doing. I mean, he's just doing this on his own and making it happen for the people that his court system serves. And it's just a great story.
That's a really good point, and it's really important for anyone to know that you don't have to start with something perfect and invest a whole bunch of money to get something. The whole point is to just start and push something out. If it's to use Zoom, use Zoom. If it's to use, I don't know, there are so many free tools and cheap tools that you can use in a creative way. They don't have to be legal tech or something tech at all. They just need to be something that solves a small problem of yours, and those problems are personal.
Yeah, he said give him he could get any court up and running virtually for $500 basically.
Can you introduce me to him? I really like this judge.
Yeah.
I have a quick follow-up on that. Was there any discussion in your podcast with him around his views, or whether he'd seen any results in the concept of access to justice as a result of his technology use?
You mean this judge in Louisiana, or was Susskind?
Yeah,
the judge
in
Louisiana?
Yeah, Louisiana.
Yeah, well, so he's primarily focused on a population of people who come through the drug courts in Louisiana. So it's a high-risk population to begin with. So one of the challenges, for example, that he had most recently was staying in touch with probationers who've gone through that system. They've been required to check in physically at the courthouse, but now the courthouse is closed. So how do you do that? So, I actually just wrote today on my post, I published a little article by a guy named Tom Martin, who runs a company called Law Droid, this judge was able to reach out to LawDroid, and together they worked to develop a bot, a text bot that lets the court stay in touch with all the probationers. Basically, it just sends out a text message to them once a week saying, "Are you okay? Do you need anything?" And
Yeah.
if they're okay, fine. If they need something, then it routes them into the right connections to get help or whatever else they need. So not exactly access to justice, but it's a form of access to justice.
Well, I mean, so I would squarely put that, from my perspective, in the access to justice bucket, because if you think about, and I don't know a ton about, post-conviction probation programs and so forth, but
Neither do I.
people need jobs, and if you can get a job after a conviction, you're lucky. Having to take time off to go back to court for an appearance is in and of itself a justice issue. What kind of employer is going to, I mean, you can run into those kinds. So to have a bot that can basically do everything that the court needs to do to check in on the parolee, you're in a great spot to be able to give a significant higher level of access to justice. Not just access to the court, but access to justice through that kind of a mechanism. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Alex, I think this topic is right up your alley. Chatbot courts.
Hey guys, I'm just a little late. Actually, I really like our Matchekhin t-shirt. It was the interesting thing today for Russian courts. Actually, we had historically today we had like the first video conference court session for Supreme Court. And it was quite interesting, it was like 3 judges sitting in the room and 2 attorneys, 2 lawyers, they were sitting from home. And, like at the beginning, like the court has to check like power of attorney and all these persons, who participate in the court session. And they asked them to show passports on camera. And that was really funny. And then those guys, they were running out from the Zoom conference just to bring the passports, and it was someone's cat walking behind of that. That was really interesting because this is Supreme Court, and this is like the highest court in the country, but they made a decision today, and it works. And I want to tell you one thing, we actually struggling for all these like video conferences and the online conferences for the last few years, like 3 or 4 years. And we always got this response from the government that it doesn't fit an existing law. It doesn't fit an existing court rules. That's impossible, blah, blah, blah. And we always got this like concerns and the complainings about some technical issues. And after COVID and after lockdown, they changed their opinion just in a couple of weeks. So like the all Russian courts will be ready to launch online court sessions on the next week, fully. So we found and we started using open source technology for that. And it works from any laptops, from any mobile devices, from anything. And it was the huge kick for us, because of all this like lockdown and the COVID, to start changing something. And it was the other problem we had in courts. So in Russia, if you need to get access for some documents or evidence or something like that, you have to go to court in person to make like copies and get all this paper. So now, like just in 1 month, in March and half of April, we start providing access for all these documents fully electronically, like fully remotely, and you don't need to travel, let's say, from Moscow to somewhere like far east, in the country. And that's the huge impact. That's the huge changes, just in a couple of months. And I can't imagine that before. That's really impressive.
We're all learning what we can do without having to do it physically. It's really fascinating.
So Victor, you've dealt with the court system in your practice, and I hope I'm not being rude, but I think you've been practicing both pre that and post that. Tell me a little bit about your experience and what what shifts have you seen, and what was the hardest to adopt, and how do you see things progressing from here?
Well, I'm with Alex on the fact that Russian courts just at the moment when they're starting to change their position in respect of this electronic life. So probably really if the Supreme Court starts this, well, all others will be really quick with this. But what I see at the moment, I teach a lot. And in Russia, this online education historically was not well developed. But during last weeks, well, we all, and I see it in a number of universities, converted very quickly into this new life, using these systems. And some teachers are very old professors. For them, it's like for judges in the highest in the courts. But well, still the system is working, and I think that pretty soon we will be in a moment when everyone will be ready to work in these circumstances. And now we are solving problems how to make exams, for example, how to, well, discuss dissertations. So this process is already going on. And if you're thinking about business, in our recent history, we had a story when there was a blackout in Moscow for 3 days. So we were almost without electricity. Before that, there was a week with very heavy smoke in Moscow, so many offices were closed. And after that, many companies, they decided to invest in this anti-crisis logistic, and they were ready today to work remotely. Of course, not all of them, but many legal firms, well, they were ready to move to this work from home. So basically, business was ready. The state system is interesting one, because if something is done on the top, well, all other regional authorities are ready to duplicate and to follow suit. So basically, we are in the process, and sometimes there is no any change in law, but well, we see that law is old, but the life is different and logistic is different, and people just not asking a lot about, well, why there are changes in law, whether it's legal or not. Well, so reality is more strong than legal formalities. And my area, tax law, is area where the authorities are very active in doing different IT things. So Russian tax ministry is among the leaders in the world on this field. And it's not a coincidence that our former leader of tax ministry, now it's our prime minister. So trying to do something globally, introducing these IT tools globally in the country. So it is what I see at the moment. So we're in the process.
It's a really great point with like a disaster or something that creates urgency, because legal industry has been super slow to adapt any technology for many reasons, but one of them is the lack of urgency, because everything that they've ever done, it continues to work. And labor costs in law are actually not increasing. People are earning less salaries graduating than recent graduates did in the 80s in terms of legal salaries. So with this urgency, there's going to be a huge shift, like with any disaster, with any economic issue. I'm blanking on the word, but we'll come back to it. This is where all the unicorns are born, and companies are looking to cut costs or automate or improve in innovation by using technology. That's when Google was born and a lot of the bigger unicorn companies were born. And I think this is creating that urgency. You guys see this change implemented, and what practical tips do you have to give to attorneys who are going through this transition right now?
One point I'd make is, I mean, you talk about the fact that the legal industry has been slow to adopt technology. One of the interesting things is that not only has it been slow, but many parts of the legal profession have been resistant to technology, that they see technology as something that is going to take their jobs away from them. You know, the talk about artificial intelligence or doing things more efficiently means I can't charge as many billable hours. So they've gone from seeing technology as a threat within the course of 2 weeks to seeing it as something they absolutely need in order to survive.
A lifeline.
Compete about face, you know, for some. I mean, again, many, not that you can't generalize about everybody, but for some, this has been a real about face in their perception of how technology relates to their practices. And you know, it clearly the firms that have been more tech ready are the ones for whom this is not a big deal right now. You know, I mean, it's significant, but it's not earth shattering. It's the firms that have been delaying that decision or not even making that decision that are the ones that are having the harder time. You know, I don't think there are really all that many lawyers in the United States who aren't able to work in the cloud in one way, shape, or form or another. But I think, you know, from what I've been hearing is that for a lot of lawyers, the more difficult part has been that they haven't prepared their staffs to do this. And so they can work remotely. They're used to working from wherever they are, but they haven't set up their office systems to make it possible or make it do the training and preparation necessary to make that part of it easy. So that's been the real difficulty, I think, for a lot of firms.
I'll add one little extra piece that I agree with everything that Bob just said. The one piece I'll add from the client perspective is that we're kind of in this crisis chaos phase right now. And, you know, I think everyone's made the point that people get scrappy, they take what they have, and, you know, it's like dinner's leftovers from the fridge. Like, we're not making anything fancy right now. The leftovers are going to taste really good and we're going to enjoy them. And look at how creative we can get. I think that's a natural phenomenon in everything that's going on right now. My hope is that we continue to push along that spectrum, even when we get out of the crisis phase, that we don't go back as an industry to the inertia that kept us in the archaic way of doing things. I think a great portion of that will come from the client side. Like that's what has driven the market over the last 5 years. I think that's what will continue, and I hope will continue to drive the market. And I agree. I think the firms and the lawyers who adapt as quickly as possible and get ahead of that curve are the ones that are really well suited to kind of go into the next phase of the legal industry. So, you know, for me, building on that momentum of being scrappy and implementing those things on the in-house side and pushing your law firms from the client side, I think is something that needs to keep up.
So actually, what has been your best experience with an outside counsel and your worst experience with an outside counsel during this period right now?
Well, we are coming up on launching a few different initiatives in the next 2 weeks, so we'll see if the answer is different. Yeah, but you know, I think to some extent I've been pleasantly surprised, and maybe this is just a lack of kind of visibility on my side, but I've been pleasantly surprised at kind of the seamlessness with which the law firms have adapted to working from home. You know, even the large white shoe law firms, like I expected a little bit more discontinuity in that kind of a situation. Didn't happen. So that's I think it's good step one. I think everyone's been amenable to timelines and being a little bit more thoughtful around the human piece of interacting with your clients and your law firms. I think that's been a nice part of it. I don't know that I have a worst yet. You know, we're shelter in place in the Bay Area was March 16th, I think. So we're just more than a month over that timeline. I haven't seen, you know, anything to indicate that things are going terribly awry, either from a work product or a timeliness or, you know, just a kind of a service aspect. So I don't know that I have a good answer for the worst part of it.
I have a question that I'm curious on. Do you think this situation will make a change in how you select outside counsels to work with? maybe you'll level the playing field with medium or smaller size law firms, because now they can connect the same way, versus large law with a lot of resources and nice office buildings to go to. Do you think that's going to make a difference in your selection process and how you work?
So maybe not necessarily my selection process. That's, the work segmentation exercise is something that we've been doing at Facebook for a little while, and that includes kind of making sure that the right kinds and levels of law firms are doing the right kinds and levels of our work. I do think that could be a more prevalent kind of evolution in other buyers of the market, to kind of push the envelope and really think about, do I need this white shoe law firm to do this basic run the company work? If it needs to go outside, maybe there are other platforms that other firms bring to the table that I can consider. So, maybe it'll be a portion of what we do moving forward. It was a trend that we were starting anyway about 1.5 years ago, and I think that will continue with us. I do think it gives law firms, again, going back to my earlier point and the point that Bob made, law firms that are able to add that kind of a value will probably get more visibility to the people who are looking at it in the right way. I do think there's an opportunity there.
So in your opinions, and if everybody can answer this, take your time. What is it that you recommend in terms of technology or something innovative and new for attorneys to bring in their legal practice, whether in-house or outside, that adds value to their practice? Like a few tips of starting points for people.
I don't even think this is necessarily a time when you need to be thinking about what's innovative or new. I think this is a time when just you got to get the basics down and get the fundamentals down. Something like having a good practice management platform in place for your practice. I think it's still you were talking earlier about the 40% more. I think the numbers are more like 60, 70, 80% of lawyers in the United States who are in solo or small practices. A lot of those firms still don't have good practice management systems, especially cloud-based practice management systems. So, I think some of them are scrambling now to get those set up, but I think that's a fundamental that they should have in order to be able to collaborate with all of their team, no matter where they are, and to be able to handle all of their client matters and manage all of their client matters wherever they are. So, that's always my number one recommendation, is just get that in place.
I have my own tip. I have my own tip for any law firm. For today, I guess any law firm in any place in any country in the world has to start practicing new law, like COVID law, because for last few months, all governments everywhere, they start making so many new laws and regulations against human rights, against constitution, against any reasonable sense, and that create a huge mass, in any type of business relations or human relations or any type of relations. And this is something that any law firm has to do after we're done with all this virus stuff. And this is quite interesting, because we were spoken with different law firms, with our clients, and we actually see that most practices actually gone. They not exist anymore. Something for travel, something for any different practices. And but from our side, we actually see how big law firms, especially in Russia, they never worked in employment law, and now they start practicing, and now they start bringing this services for persons, for customers, like companies, firms who always working with big corporates. This is very interesting.
For me, the most useful thing I ever implemented and I implemented anything I do are chatbots, because the single most important thing in practicing law and running your legal business is customer service, and your clients being able to get answers fast. Like, for example, last night Trump tweeted this about immigration fully shutting down in the US. That's gonna kill so many immigration firms if it actually ends up.
6 billion industry. 6 billion industry.
So what are these people going to do? In that moment, they have questions. Like at 10 p.m. at night, I was getting a bunch of messages of people worrying and freaking out. Now, not everybody, shares their cell phone or has a chatbot or has a way for their clients to get in contact with them. I mean, some of these people probably didn't sleep last night and are up until morning because they have nowhere to go and they have nothing to do. And how are they going to get answers besides just Google until their attorney wakes up at night, turns on or starts listening to voicemails, and then go down the line of returning these phone calls? So that for me is an important one. The second thing is just the flexibility of the attorneys. Like this immigration one is a great example. People are going to have to find different practice areas or different type of work to pivot into, because immigration is primarily usually solo practitioners. So to keep an open mind and to look into other practice areas where you can still make a living and continue to be be of service during this time, I think that's important. And in addition to that, tools that have some built-in processes that will allow these lawyers to switch to a different practice areas without deeply having knowledge with those practice areas. I think contracts and contract disputes and simple demands are a simple one to transition into. We all learned that in law school, so it's not a brand new practice area, but I think IT solutions and just working on keeping an open mind and on your stress levels to deal with change are my two biggest tips.
Yeah, there's a financial component to that too, especially for the smaller firms. I sort of monitor the subreddit lawyers, where the kind of lawyers talking. It's a lawyers only subreddit where they kind of talk about their practices, and there've been a lot of solos on there lately talking about the fact that their practices are drying up and they need to transition into some other practice area, but they don't have the financial resources to kind of support themselves as they do that. And it's a real difficulty, I think, for some smaller firm lawyers. And I don't have an answer for that, but that transitioning to another practice area isn't always isn't simply a matter of getting the training and the education. There's a financial aspect to it as well that lawyers need to find a way to deal with.
I think the one piece I'll add to that is 99% of client bases are going to have economic issues with respect to their spend over the next, foreseeable future. And that is going to have implications for how law firms deliver on their promise for results, but have to do it in a more cost-effective fashion. It's not a new formula that's going to be kind of pushed out to the legal industry. But I think it will be one that will be reemphasized over the next 2 years. So I think getting smarter around leveraging the different pieces that are available to law firms to be able to do that is going to be critical for their own success. I think it'll have implications for their own employees, the potential to expand outside of their current client base and their current the work that they currently do. So I think, again, the firms that are able to do that and think outside the box with respect to how they bill for things, if it has a fundamental shift in pushing the legal industry away from the billable hour even more, I think those are all really well suited, not just for clients who buy these legal services, but for the industry as a whole, including for the mental well-being of lawyers who are in the billable hour model.
That's a really good one, because that's something that we didn't talk about, but the business model of law is definitely going to shift, and these alternative fee arrangements are going to be the way to go. I mean, at every conference they talk about it, and at every conference I've heard people say, are we going to do away with billables? Are we not going to do away with billables? I personally don't think we'll ever fully do away with billables, because certain things just have to be hourly, but that's such a small percentage of legal work that I really think the primary way of billing is going to be different types of alternative fee arrangements, and flat fee being one of them. Let's talk about a little bit about if you guys have been on the client side, put your client hat on. It's easy for Akshay. What have you been impressed about in terms of customer service, customer experience with law firms or attorneys that you use in your normal lives? I won't ask what practice area, I'll give away too much about your personal lives, but what is it that you like and what is it that you dislike?
Yeah, well, my divorce attorney, oh no, never mind. No, I haven't used an attorney in a while, actually. I am an attorney, but I haven't used one.
Good for you.
There's this concept of meeting your client where they are, which is not unique to the legal industry. It's a component of the service industries across the globe. I certainly have felt that there has been a bigger shift towards that in the legal industry, and I do think to some extent, the type of service provider that's on the other side has an implication for where they meet their client. But I think there's been a bigger shift more recently especially on the law firm side and especially on the large law firm side, to start getting a little bit more creative. And, again, from my perspective, they are well behind the curve of where I think they should be in terms of servicing their clients. Simple things like having practice management groups that are segmented from the lawyers who are actually doing the lawyering. That's a fairly new phenomenon in large law. Having pricing and kind of business development arms of their law firms. That's still a fairly new phenomenon. But I think that trend is starting to grow. I think that's being driven by the buy side of the market. And I think that's changing the way that the relationship between the lawyer who's lawyering and the client themselves, I think is moving towards a more functional aspect of how I think it should be. So I've certainly welcomed those kinds of conversations where, lawyers that we're working with, will approach us, say, hey, here's a new piece that we're trying out with our clients. Is this something that you think would fit well in your world? So I've really enjoyed those conversations more in the last year.
Business of law, right? Teaching the business of law to lawyers, customer service and experience, financials, business development and lead generation, marketing, PR. Yeah. These are things that traditionally haven't been so popular for attorneys, and nobody ever taught that. You practice law, and I think there was a trend at some point to big law, right? Towards big law and a lot of law firms, and that decreased the personal touch. And I think this trend is going to increase the personal touch again that we lost a little bit. I don't know, due to large law, busyness, traffic, working in offices instead of home, or a modern way of working. I think customer service is really improving right now. At least that's my experience in any industry. Customer service is great right now.
Well, and one of the odd side effects of us all sheltering in place is that we are all doing more of the video conferencing. And I think it's for some law practices, it's demonstrated that we don't need to make you trudge down to our office to have a meeting with us. We can meet with you virtually, and we can talk about your cases. And for others, it's made them realize that this can be a very effective way of communicating, and whether with colleagues or with clients or whoever else. And so I think that's one of the things that's going to forever change. The video conference is suddenly here to stay and is going to replace a lot of what we did in bricks and mortar buildings before.
Yeah. So I want to say that we're able to take questions from anyone from the attendees. You can just press the button to raise your hand and we'll join you on the call so you can talk to us. And if you're shy and you don't want to talk, you can just type your message in the chat. So actually brought up mental health. I'm a huge advocate for that. Most of my pitches about technology and the modern practice of law is about being happy lawyers. And I think now more than ever, it's important to have these conversations because in general, practicing law is a stressful career. Attorneys have the highest rate of alcoholism and drug abuse of any other profession. And these changes, these huge changes are a little bit shocking. And I think it's important to talk about not just the difficulty of transitioning through this change, but also support of what kind of changes and what to implement, especially for solo practitioners who don't have a team to rely on. What are some tips for you guys? I know, Bob, you got a bunch of attorneys except for Alex here. What are your tips on mental health and the practice of law during these times and how to prepare for when everything dies down?
You mean mental health after we get out of this, or mental health while we're going through this?
While we're going through it and after.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I think one of the challenges just right now, while we're going through this, that I hear a lot of people talk about is if you're not used to working from home, as you and I are, Bahar, is learning how to draw the boundaries between work and home. I think that can really be a challenge to your mental health, because I think you feel that suddenly there is no boundary, and you tend to you tend to go one way or the other. You tend to work too much and too many hours and not take time for personal dealing time, you know, time with your family or for yourself, or you go the other way and you find all sorts of distractions around the house and don't get enough work done. So, I mean, I think just one critical way of maintaining mental health during a time like this is to establish routines and establish boundaries between work and personal life.
Victor, you've been quiet for a while. I hope you're adding up all of your tips to say all at once. What tips do you have for lawyers?
Well, you see, I deal with different types of lawyers, including students, and sometimes I'm thinking about what kind of tip I can give to them. And well, using my experience, currently I'm saying that, well, guys, first of all, you should find a proper place for yourself, because you might have as a target, well, big firms or big salaries. But well, if you internally will not be happy with type of job, in any event, you will be shifted to go somewhere else. So please think about yourself. What kind of job really interesting for you? Well, litigation, or maybe scientific job, or maybe you will be a manager in legal business. And it is very difficult for young people to find the proper answer, or to find a way to find this solution. So people just should think about this comfort position for them. Unfortunately, we don't have any special subjects on this. And the traditional route is just, well, to find the proper place and proper position. Then for some reasons, people are losing their positions, but well, because they were just not in proper places. So I think that for the more experienced persons also, the question is the same. And if there is a question, well, in this, let's say, crisis situation, or this shift in business, well, whether to find a new area of law, or maybe to find something in the area of IT, well, people should find something individually well for them. Otherwise, well, it will not work. So there are many different advice or tips we can give, but well, there are different people, and lawyers should think not about their clients, but also about themselves. Because, well, it's very difficult. And it's very painful finally to see that, well, I spent 20 years doing something wrong. There is no universal, well, tip today. So my tip is to think about yourself, who you are, what type of job is good for you, whether you're an individual advocate type guy, or you're really a team animal, and you should be somewhere in big or small thing. Think about yourself. Think about yourself. And if there is a time to change, well, it's a good time to think about you.
I actually teach a class on this very kind of concept and topic at Santa Clara. It's a fairly new required class for first-year law students, and it has implications both for the long term in terms of how you think about your career, how you think about changes in your career, but also has implications for, you know, the kind of crisis, chaotic situations that we're in right now. And, you know, just following up on what Victor was saying, one of the core principles and kind of thought processes that come out of this class is, you know, we are happiest when our values, our skills, and our interests are combined and are very prevalent in the role, the company, and or the job that we select to do. So the one piece that I think that I've seen that gets people there is being brutally honest with yourself about who you are, what you care about, and what you like doing. And I think what all the research has shown us, including the mental health statistics and some of the substance abuse statistics in our profession, is that far often lawyers don't think in that way. And I think that's a really important step for law students to start early on in law school, and certainly through these kinds of transitions, is really be careful about being honest with yourself. And I think that's a good direction to start taking to get yourself through these kinds of situations.
We have an interesting question, and I think it's a good time for it. Somebody asked, as soon as the floor is open to questions, I'd very much appreciate your input on young lawyers interested in pursuing a career in the human rights field in post-COVID-19 era, especially after Victor and Akshay's latest comments in terms of how someone sees themselves as a professional and an individual. So human rights. I can start with that one and let you guys comment on it, because my dream growing up was to be a human rights attorney, and I had this dream of working for the UN, and I visited Kenya and wanted to move to Nairobi to practice human rights law. And human rights is such a general topic to have, and the understanding of it that you have when you're younger is more in terms of like the traditional human rights or civil liberties. And there is so much right now that's arguably a human right. For example, just access to justice is arguably a human right, because how do you know your rights without having access to law or lawyers or understanding to know that? So in my view, in my perspective, I look at it in such a broad way, and even helping attorneys be happier in their practice of law, isn't that a little bit of a human right and improvement? But I think civil liberties are going to come back strong, and that area of law is going to grow. And I think it has been growing over the last 3 or 4 years since Trump's presidency. With everything that's happened, human rights has become an up-and-coming area of law again since I don't know how long ago. Any answer from you guys?
The only thing I would add, I don't know anything about human rights law. I mean, well, I know something about it, but I don't know anything about how to pursue a career in it. But something I know about pursuing just about any kind of a career in law is that if there's an area that you're interested in, and if there's an area that you want to begin to get established in, one of the best ways to do that is to start writing and publishing and blogging in that area. I'm a longtime lawyer, as well as I'm a journalist as well as a lawyer, and I've been blogging for a long time. But I think I've seen any number of lawyers who've really been able to help build and propel their careers in a particular area of law that they're interested in it by really getting immersed in it as writers and publishers, and that helps them get engaged with others in the field, and that leads to all sorts of opportunities.
Yeah, I would add, you know, one of the skills that we teach in the class when students are often unsure about what area they want to be in or they want to explore is codify it, put it down on paper. What do you need to know? Who do you need to talk to? What do you want to learn? What do you expect to find out? Is that in line with what you want? I mean, all of those things, I think, to some extent, human beings do, you know, it's kind of a secondary thought process. But I think the act of actually planning those things out and then ticking them off as you know, almost like a to-do list, but having that plan in place and then it'll lead to more questions, and then that's really important. It'll lead to people that you should be connecting with, and things that you should be reading. And then once you do figure something out, I think the blogging aspect is such a new thing in the last 5 to 10 years. There's a student at Santa Clara who is almost an expert now. She's a second-year law student, almost an expert on Section 230 of the Communications and Decency Act, which is all about platform immunity for companies like Facebook and Google and Amazon and these big tech companies. And it's a real passion of hers. And she started a blog, and she's been writing about it on a regular basis. Well, her pieces have been picked up, I think, by courts in deciding issues on CDA 230, and certainly by the big tech companies around here in the Silicon Valley. So I think it's a really good and easy way to use your passion, put things down in the internet and have it be discussed. I think that's a really good idea.
So my one advice to add to yours is also to reach out to people who do this and find mentors and people you admire in that practice area and understand what the lifestyle is and match it to the lifestyle that you want to live. If you're going into a practice area and it requires a lot of travel and you're a homebody and you don't like to travel, you should know that stuff up front. Or if you are shy and not a litigator and it's important to go understand what the day-to-day is like. So getting mentors, interning, shadowing people, and just not feeling shy to reach out to people for uncomfortable questions and advice, that's the way to go. I mean, I was saying in the beginning of the call how I met Bob at a conference on our week 1 of launch and have been stalking him since then. And I found actually on LinkedIn and reached out to him, and he's on our advisory board now. And this is how it works. You have to find these avenues for yourself and be honest with your intent and be honest with your purpose and what you're looking for from them. That's important. So we'll ask the one non-lawyer. What's your advice, Alex?
I think Robert, you have to remember those services do not pay. Remember with the chatbot, then they were disputing road tickets, right? And I guess that's the great time, to launch something like that. Do not pay for all this. Like, in Russia, we have, so if you break these isolation rules, you have to pay something from $200 to $500 every time. So, and that's against of existing law, because, the government just approved that because they don't know how else keep everyone staying home. This is the only the money reason. And I guess this is the perfect time to launch something like this service, like do not pay, just to help all these guys, all people, all humans in different countries to protect and to support their human rights. That's the perfect time, because like in every place in the world, like all human rights is just staying out of, it didn't work like before. So I guess that's the best time for that.
I think this is a point that we missed to talk about this whole time, and that's productizing legal services. And I think this is the biggest point to all lawyers. Like, if you understand something very clearly in the law and you can think of a repeatable process, or you build your own how-to where you will just recycle something from one client to another, that's something that's capable of being turned into an automated product where you can just earn revenue from it. This is why there's so many people are now going into learning courses and master classes and other things. They're creating this recurring revenue. And there's things that are so easy to do this with. For example, Alex mentioned this ticket. It could be filling out a certain forms. It could be anything in the estate planning area, because it's all documents that have to be assembled. It's anything in contracts, some things in employment law of like what people are entitled to, their rights, some of the labor rules of the state. So if you can think of anything like that, it could be a transition into a legal, non-legal career where you can build something and just promote it, and that becomes your job in the future. So any last minute tips, advice, anything you guys want to share with anyone? I want to open it for questions to the audience, but I want to give you guys a chance to get your last minute thoughts out. No.
I'll say that there is absolutely light at the end of the tunnel. We may not see it yet, but it's there. And this is really hard for everyone. And I think, you know, one of the best things, if this is possible for you, is I like to get outside and just get like 30 minutes of like alone walking time. That is like my #1 mental health kind of routine on a daily basis right now. I'll leave with that.
Yeah, I would just add to that in terms of the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm a great believer in the idea that out of adversity comes opportunity, and I think there is light at the end of the tunnel, and I think in a lot of ways, you know, we'll come out of this the better for it, and that includes our law practices, the way we serve our clients, the legal profession broadly. I think we're going to see a lot of progress made in the legal profession as a result of what's a horrible situation right now.
That's the 100%, you know, because I think like we all living right now in 2020, and you know, before we were living like year and year and year, and the whole this situation just accelerate us. I guess after all this stuff, we will be somewhere in 2025, because you know, it cuts so many unnecessary things. And you know, I was thinking about like all this bankruptcy cases and shut down big companies, small businesses, and most of them they want so great or so efficient or so innovative, and now they just have to change, and now they have to close or restart or reborn in the new conditions. That's very interesting, because you know, like all these coaches and psychologists, they always saying like you have to leave your comfort zone. But with all this situation, it looks like we also leave like the zone outside of the comfort zone. You know, like we did it twice, and it gives us, it kicks us out of that. And like I was personally shocked and in a huge stress in the first couple of weeks, but now I see like how everything start moving around us, especially like in the IT industry, with innovations, with lawyers, with legal. And I can tell you, this virus has impact even more than like 10, 15 years before for legal industry. So I'm really happy that everything happened in this way, but it's sad, but it was necessary for lawyers.
Let me add that, well, today it's a great opportunity for everyone, well, from business, for academia, for lawyers, in respect of opportunities. And this window of opportunities will not be great, so it's temporary stuff. So we need just concentrate of what kind of opportunities we see or we can find in this moment. And well, it's a good and proper job, because pretty soon we will lose this chance to use this opportunity, because it will be visible for everyone. Our job is to think about something, and it's actually intellectual exercise. So we should just think more about, well, what's going on, and to use our analytic skills. So that's it. Let's think about something positive, what can be taken from the circumstances.
So my tip is just to be creative. there's a lot more tolerance for creativity right now and things that have never existed. So if you have any ideas that someone called you crazy last month, bring that idea back. So think of things that way. How can I do things differently? And do literally whatever you want. There's no one that's watching you. There's no one that's judging you. And there's a lot of people who could use whatever problem that you solve in whatever weird way with tape and glue that they're also going to copy and do. So don't be shy, be creative. And I think it's a good time to try to take a lot of advice from new startup founders, because they're the ones who've had to do this, who had to be creative, who had to stand in front of people and share, you know, their weird and crazy ideas sometimes. So it's a mental state, and learn to stay in that mental state and live in that mental state of just creativity and problem solving. So thank you, guys, to all the speakers. It's always interesting to talk to you. I know I talk to you often, and there's a Farsi saying that I eat your head because I talk so much, but it's a super interesting topic to talk about, especially during these times. And I can't wait to see what things are going to be like in a month or 2 months or 3 months, and maybe we can get together and have a contest and judge everything new that came out during this time and make recommendations that way. I posted all of your, or the girls posted your LinkedIn links on the chat here. Reach out to them. I'm volunteering you guys for support. Reach out to me. We're here to answer any questions. We're here to share our personal experiences, even if it's just how are we dealing, staying at home, some of us with families, some of us with dogs, and anything, just connect with people. That's the only way to get through this right now, with each other.
Thank you so much, Bahar, for organizing.
Yeah,
this. It's
thanks
great.
for having us.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you all.
Have a good
Thank you.
have a
Bye-bye.
good day.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.